Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Invisible InCourage SHOW, brought to you by the Invisible Disabilities Association. Now, remember, that's InCourage. That's I encourage, because we know that you need courage to get through the day. I want to really welcome you today to my great friend Brian J. Esposito, and CEO of Esposito Intellectual Enterprises. Welcome, Brian.
Wayne, such a pleasure and honor to be with you, pal. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, yeah, it's so great to be able to spend time with you. And so let's just jump in this a little bit, Brian. So we originally met in 2015 and became fast friends. I mean, I was just blown away of our time together. In 2019, we were honored to have you join our volunteer team as our director of development. So, Brian, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us today about where you grew up, kind of your family, and how you got into business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, with pleasure. So, grew up in the Asbury Park area of New Jersey. So, a lot of people know it as Bruce Springsteen country. So, about an hour south of New York City on the Jersey shoreline. Grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My mom blessed enough not to work, and my dad took on that responsibility. And I raised around that type of household. So, how I expected myself to grow up. So, seeing him work very hard for his family, make sacrifices for his family, and powering through some major hurdles and overcoming them instilled a lot of that in me. I often would go to work with him even at 8 years old and help, pack boxes. I remember specifically he had a nail care manufacturing company, so I'd fill a little nail treatment bottle up with his treatment, put the brush in it, put the cap on it, put that into a box, and then put that into a 6-pack, and then put that into a master pack, and then pack it and ship it. And then, what a sense of pride, right? To have all these components that were nothing, but then putting all together was something. And then also understanding, wow, somebody around the world actually bought that. And really cool experience as a child, and understanding business and commerce and supply and demand. So that set me on my entrepreneurial journey early. And at a young age, I was just always out there finding ways to earn, building little teams together as teenagers to go out there and mow lawns or shovel driveways, whatever the case may be. Just earn, and never really relying on anything else or my parents or anybody else. My older siblings was like, "How's this kid always have money?" It's kind of a funny memory to think about. And they're 10 to 13 years older than me, so I was just a little business person out there hustling, and that just kept evolving from there.
It's interesting. I find that a lot of times entrepreneurs it just becomes naturally. I remember as a kid going to camp, and I never thought about this at the time, but you got one candy bar and one can of soda you could have each day at the camp, and I would show up with a whole box full of a suitcase with all these different candies and everything. And I remember selling hot tamales to the kids for 3 cents a piece.
There you go.
I never thought, oh wow, I'm actually a little entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I go home with more money than I went to camp with.
And zero cost, right? I mean, your parents bought you that initial box. So brilliant. Exactly. I love your style.
Yeah. So, I really appreciate that. And, the whole aspect, and we'll talk a little bit more about that whole journey as it continues on. But in 2015, when we met, what was connecting with Invisible Disabilities? Why was it important to you at that time?
I'm addicted to meeting and building relationships with incredible people, such as you and your wife, and hearing your story. That was the initial call to action. Like, wow, the people need this. How can I help? And then personally, at that point, my dad was about 5 years into his diagnosis of PLS, which is a slower form of ALS. And early on in his in that disease, turning our whole family upside down, he looked fine, right? So, but he had the poor motor skills, foot dragging. That started a little bit later, where it was more visible. But there's also the fear and anxiety inside of a human being when they're presented with a diagnosis like that there is no cure for. That eventually, it's just going to take over your entire body and shut you down, and not overnight, right? It's gonna punish you along the way. So depending on your mindset, and some people are amazing enough where they get blessed with the ability to be grateful for their life and thank God, and cherish and honor every day. And then a lot of people get angry, right? You pick one of two channels or two roads that you're going to go down. My dad definitely good and bad days, right? Mostly a little bit why me mentality, which affected the family because we're trying to be as positive as possible. So
Right.
being around that and firsthand, I got really deep on, okay, what is going on here? Because in my mind, there's always a solution, which is detriment to me too, especially when it comes to the health crisis. And I started really looking at things like Lyme's disease, right? I think it's a global epidemic, and I've learned that Lyme's disease mimics MS, ALS, Parkinson's. Often gets misdiagnosed because there's no money in it for the healthcare system. They don't care if you have Lyme disease. Go take some doxycycline and powerful antibiotics and go on your way. But not that disease or whatever you want to call it, that bacteria can live in your body forever. And if you understand what it does to your neurological system and how it slows down everything, I was like, hey, wait a minute, this could be a form of Lyme disease. And then it's okay. Now what? So maybe you're onto something, but there's no help, right? There's no doctors that really care or are going to risk treating somebody that's not technically diagnosed with Lyme disease, but the family or the patient believes that they are. So with all that happening and that mess and that world for a patient or a family trying to find the right professional health care, having what you guys have built and tools and resources and materials and government placards in certain states to really help somebody get through the day a little bit better and help people identify, hey, this person's dealing with something. You may not physically see it. They might not be in a wheelchair or on crutches or any other physical equipment that you can say, hey, they have a disability. And, what also connected us really strongly is after COVID, I was like, well, man, everybody's got an invisible disability now. Everybody's living in fear, anxiety, and stress from economies, political unrest, global pandemic that's possibly going to kill everybody. You wake up in the morning and you don't even want to go outside your room. So again, back to Invisible Disabilities or IDA, what you've built over the last, my God, over 25 years and the resources there and your commitment, the world needs it. And somebody can have an invisible disability tomorrow, depending upon their nervous system or their levels of anxiety and stress or fears. And you have the tools and resources to help them get through it.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the whole Lyme disease. I mean, my wife Sherry, was permanently disabled at the age of 27 in 1991, and in 92 she was diagnosed with Lyme disease from a tick bite. Right, we can trace that back to when she was 14 years before. And you're right. I mean, wow, especially back then, if you can imagine back in 1992, talk about what people didn't even no clue what they had about when it came to Lyme disease. And you're absolutely right how it mimics all kinds of things. It destroys the body, and it's probably been the biggest impact on her life and all the different impacts. So, but as you well said, I mean, people can't see it. People don't understand. It's that don't believing thing, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that as well. But yeah, so that personal journey obviously impacted you and your family, and really gave you a sense of compassion, and that kind of leads me into you've got kind of your motto, which is time is our most precious commodity. I mean, you talk about that, and tell me what does that mean? I mean, why did you come up with that? You could have come up with anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what we've come up with at IDA is, we're changing the way the world sees disabilities, right?
Yeah.
And to change that. So tell me about time is our most precious commodity.
Yeah, again, being the youngest of four, so that's been my company, my private company, my private holding company model since the late 90s, early 2000s when I started developing it. And again, being the youngest of four by 10 to 13 years, when I was growing up, I was watching grandparents, aunts, great aunts and uncles, family members, parents, friends, grandparents, friends just drop like flies because I was so much later in life. And I was often at more funerals than any weddings or bar mitzvahs or christenings. So it was just, that was my routine, get my funeral suit out. So I was like, damn, at a young age. And at 8, I lost my grandfather, my dad's father, who was my best friend. I used to run home from school and want to be with him every day and not be with these idiot kids that I was in class with. Like, that's just who I wanted to hang out with. So then losing him at 8, I quickly realized and had a lot of fear. Like, I didn't even want to go to school during, I think that's second grade. And I was like, I just felt like everybody was going to die around me. And my parents, my siblings, I just didn't understand it fully. But that got me really spiritual, really connected with, well, at least in my mind, okay, there's an afterlife, because I needed that for comfort, and they're with me, their spirits are with me, their souls are with me on this journey. So that gave me the ability to kind of push through, and it made me realize we are here for a second. Tomorrow's a rumor. So understand that, and that's been my motto in life, is that time is our most precious commodity. I don't want to be a liar. I also say in the business world that water is. So don't call me a liar. Water is right up there with time. But so understanding that, it takes some time and navigating. But if you go into the day like that, and you really protect your seconds, your minutes, your hours through the day, with who do you surround yourself with, who do you allow into your life, who is your inner circle, because it's not worth anybody in that inner circle or during your daily routine. And it could even be a family member. Nobody should ever bring you any uh, chaos, toxicity, noise, negativity. Here and there, obviously, we're all human, and be there for somebody and help them get through the moment. But there are people that are just energy suckers or energy vampires that don't want to see you do well. And you have this, maybe a trauma bond with them, where you just rationalize or justify, hey, I've known them since I was a kid. They're my best friends, but my God, they just wear me out. Like your life is so precious, and you should never be subjected to that. So, that's also applies to my business career, like who I do business with. I say no more than yes when I don't align with people's ethics, integrity, morals, values. I look for empathy. I need to see empathy in everybody I sit with or work with or partner with. If you don't care about another human being or understand what they're going through and how hard life is, then just get the hell out of my life, because I don't need you around me. So that's how it's evolved. There's a great comparison to seconds and money. So I think it's 86,400. So if you had $86,400 in the bank and somebody robbed $10 from you, would you spend the other $86,390 to get that $10 back? Well, anybody with a small education, the brain would say absolutely not. I would never do that. So if you apply that to time, there's 86,400 seconds in a day. Somebody robs 10 seconds from you, why would you spend the rest of those seconds worrying about them or making yourself crazy over them? Just let it go and move on.
Hmm. Yeah, it's well, we know how important it is. I mean, when you're dealing with chronic illnesses and invisible disabilities, time really is about it's today, right? I always think about the whole aspect of, we have this issue of hope, and I've talked a lot about this through the organization as well. Is hope is not, it should not be in a cure per se, because we don't know if there's going to be a cure or not. But hope is when somebody can help somebody else. Maybe somebody with a disability is helping somebody else. Maybe somebody who's caring for somebody. That moment in time where they're helping them, that's the hope. It's hope in humanity that says, hey, you're valuable, you're important to me, I believe you, which is all the things that we aspire here at Invisible Disabilities, which is unique to what we do. It's not about you're just a number, you're just something that we can you're like a cost savings or a cost expense or whatever it is. It's really important. That's that relationship. You talked about the empathy, right? It's valuing people, validating people, what they're going through is real, even though you can't see it, right?
Yeah.
So of course you talked about your personal, your holding company, but one of the things that always amazes me, and I'm a real technologist. I love technology. Done it ever since I was a kid. Anything that has to do with technology, I'm involved in, and it just, in fact, it's allowed us to really impact people around the world for a very small organization that has an incredible impact. But so tell me about your ability to stay on the cutting edge and industry trends, and I'm sure obviously time plays into that too, right? Because there's so much coming our way so fast right now. So kind of tell me about how you're doing that, and maybe a few cool projects you're kind of working on right now.
Yeah. So my entire career is adapt or die, and I think you know very well, and you're always very supportive online with everything we do. There's over 115 companies in my private holdings. We reach over 25 different industries. Um, Within that model, I've been first to develop some great IP and technologies, products, systems, and services, which is exciting when you're out in the world and working and understanding markets. There's a need, so there's that old business saying, find the need, fill a need. That'll never stop. And a lot of companies don't exist anymore. The Searses of the world, the Kmart's, the Enrons, the Global Crossings or MCI WorldCom, they didn't continue to evolve and adapt. The blockbusters, everybody points to that one. They had a chance to be the Netflix, but because they got so complacent and felt that they were a massive empire that couldn't fail or fall, and it did. And it all stems from leadership not understanding markets, complacency, and not adapting or evolving. So that's instilled in me, and you as a technologist, it's instilled in you, right? That's the reason we could do this, and I don't have to sit in a room with you with an old VHS recorder, is because it's continued to evolve, right? Or spend $10,000 in editing and film. Everything has just continued to progress. So that's been my entire world. It's tough when you're first. It's expensive when you're first to keep it alive, and if you're self-funding it, it's even more expensive if you're trying to raise money and people don't understand it. It's very difficult to get people to understand that you're building the next greatest, biggest thing. But with that, as you mentioned, an exciting stuff that we're doing. I took over a public company, Diamond Lake, in August of 23. DLMI is the ticker symbol. We've got incredible, iconic rock stars of industry that are longtime friends and supporters on our team and on our board. And I took that over because I've been heavily involved in tokenization and crypto and blockchain for over 13 years, but not as a speculator buying other people's stuff or Bitcoin or Ethereum, but understanding, hey, this is the future of how financial transactions are going to be done. This is the future of building community. And so I went down the path of understanding that world and technology and building it into our own companies, and then creating a public company that's focused on that being built into its business model. I also understand that the wealth of the world, or most people around the world, don't understand crypto, NFTs, digital assets, tokenization. They hear these buzzwords, just like they didn't understand internet, or they didn't understand the telephone, or they didn't understand the record player. Like, it's just, there's a moment where people don't understand it, and then there's a moment where it becomes part of your life. And then depending upon the gap or the speed of how it scales or the evolution of that, it takes some time. So because people still don't understand it, and the Warren Buffetts of the world say it's not real, it's fake, I figured, well, people are very comfortable buying and selling a stock. So let's be a stock that they can easily have in their portfolio, or they can look at and do research on, and see how we're applying things like crypto, tokenization, NFTs, and digital assets into a business or into a public company. And then, thankfully, new initiatives with current administration is trying to make the USA the capital of the crypto capital of the world. So, right place, right time. We've grown tremendously, and people say, "Oh my God, how'd you do this in 2 years?" Well, no, I've been doing this for 24 years. It's been my entire career. And then there's a moment where maybe it all just clicks. Maybe you're 40 when it all just clicks. Maybe you're 70 when it all just clicks. That's the exciting and crappy part of life. You just never know when that magic moment's going to happen. But if you're not out there hustling and working hard and creating opportunities or making opportunities or meeting amazing people like you, then there's a definite answer that it's not going to happen. So just as hard as it may be, I know a lot of entrepreneurs and great business people follow you or are part of IDA and part of your world. Like, it's hard. You're not alone. Keep pushing through it. Find great people. Find one amazing supporter that helps you, that opens up opportunities for you. And that's all you need. Just want one person next to you that believes in you.
Well, I so appreciate that and really understand that from, Invisible Disabilities. We're getting ready to celebrate our 30th year, or well, actually 30th anniversary. We're actually in our 30th year. And yeah, the organization has not existed because, or continued to exist because we had this big bank account. It's because of the passion of helping the people. Yeah. And that the need, that's a big part of it. And I know that that's a big part of what you get involved in is it something that people need, not just a want, right? It's really a need, something that can change their lives for the better. And that's what, really Invisible Disabilities. And yes, I do look forward to the day where we have our own token or whatever that's called. I'm still not even there when it comes to, from the technology standpoint and understanding. I have an idea about blockchain enough to understand those type of things, which is really confusing for a lot of people. But the ability to fund even nonprofits and stuff. And I know that's something you've been looking into as well. And we're excited about that in the future. And, we're an organization that we're always looking at what's the technology that we can use to have an impact on millions of people, not just the person down the street. We want to help them per se, or the person in the neighborhood or in your city, but really how can we help at a a state, national, global level, because invisible disabilities, people, it's this common human condition of how people treat people, right? They disregard them, they disbelieve them, they prejudge them, all these things when they can't see it. And it's actually very common, in the US. 27% of adults have a disability, 57% have a chronic illness, right? It's actually the normal thing, not the abnormal thing. And we're trying to really help people do that through, our vision of Invisible No More, to say, hey, you're important. Why would we treat you lesser? Why wouldn't we treat you the same as everybody else, right? Because you're probably more like everybody else than you think. So, no, I really, really so appreciate that. And so back to your journey a little bit here. And I know you kind of brought up a little bit about, the impact on COVID and stuff like that. But I know your journey's been in the last, few years or so, it's been even more personally impacting. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that and how you've kind of navigated that.
Well, on the negative side, which flipped into a positive, in 2016, a drunk driver hit me head on in Nashville. Shouldn't be here. I've had a few near-death experiences, but that one was quite a catastrophe amongst many different levels. So that even more enhanced time is our precious commodity. It took what I initially believed in and put it on steroids. I had about 30 or so companies in my holdings at that time, and financially realized I was the glue, the deal maker, the guy that made all that work. And when you took me out of the equation, my little empire just completely collapsed. So a year later, millions in debt, sitting in the corner and saying, what the hell is going on? And all these people that I helped or supported, nowhere to be found. I co-signed for homes for employees and cars. And, when they realized, I often reference the cow had no more milk, me being the cow, gone. That's why I said before, find one good person that you could be in the trenches with and you can get through anything. And I couldn't find anybody. And also, this was my issue. I didn't bring this home to my parents, but as I mentioned before, my dad was suffering PLS. My mom was dealing with bladder cancer and all other kinds of health issues. So I'm like, this is not their problem. This is my problem. So figured it out. But what happened during that process is I became very grateful that woman hit me, because she could have killed somebody. So I'll take that hit over and over again, and so I'm still here. And my model, even though I believed it was successful, it was wrong. And it was wrong in a way that it couldn't be patched up and edited or restructured, because it was just it's already built. Right? You can't change the basement of a house if it's still on top of it. So I became grateful that woman destroyed my world, because I was able to sit back and reanalyze who I am, what's my value, and how do I really create something that is impactful, that can go on without me, and that's a machine. And it took me up until recently where it all worked. It's a great machine now. It's all positivity, great teams and management, great opportunities. I wouldn't know 90% of the people that I know now if I didn't restructure my life and my professional career and rebuild. I didn't file for bankruptcy. It was personal. Maybe it was stupidity. I think Henry Ford has done it. I think, many famous, successful, I say successful money-wise, I don't say successful as a human being. People have filed for bankruptcy, took advantage of that system and screwed everybody over and went off and rebuilt everything. In my mind, I was like, well, even if I file for bankruptcy, I'm going to pay back all my debts. And, and it was all personal debts. It wasn't investor money. So I said, why would I even do that? So I just worked with everybody that was reasonable. I said, hey, listen, I'm tapped. So you can't get blood from a rock, but I'm going to come back from this and we'll work on payment terms and I'll make it whole. Some things took 7-8 years to pay off and pay down, but that's where it goes to integrity and character. That's, I would have loved to go on a vacation to a Caribbean island and relax, but no, I had to pay my debts and my obligations and my responsibilities. So, it all depends how you're wired and, what kind of mark you want to leave on this world. I always wanted people to know, hey, Brian's as decent of a human being as he can be. He's a man of his word. And if it takes longer than I anticipated, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to figure it out.
It's interesting, you talk about, I mean, suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character.
Yeah.
And what happens is we have this, our society is so full of, I don't want to suffer for any reason whatsoever. So I'm going to avoid it like at all costs, and everybody that's going through it. There's that. And then I also want to get to character by what I call almost the microwave method. I want to skip the suffering and the endurance and just get to the good stuff. Yeah. Well, it doesn't work that way. I mean, if you look at all the people throughout history and throughout time and in our lives and stuff, what's fascinating to me is we have a lot of young people. We have some young ambassadors and stuff that come to the organization. I mean, they're living with rare diseases and all kinds of stuff. But if you meet them and they're 19 or 20 or 25, and you put them up against a lot of the other kids nowadays that haven't had to go through what these kids have gone through, it's a world of difference. Yeah. They have grown up in a sense. Their character's amazing. I mean, I remember a gal who her dad was a medical salesman, and he fell at one of the hospitals and got a traumatic brain injury, and she's like 17 years old, and he's the income for the family, and she decides to take a year off from school and drive him to his sales appointments during that time. Put off a year, her senior year, a year, because she knew that she needed to do that, and it was amazing, and what it did to her, and the amount, just grew them all, and the family was able to make it through the tough time. But that whole notion of we think that those things, I mean, I had an alcoholic stepfather, all this other crazy stuff growing up and everything, and I look back and go, man, what did I learn? And well, it allowed me to have, you brought that up earlier, empathy, right? To understand that life is going to have all these things, and if we walk through life thinking that it's just all hunky-dory and nothing's ever going to happen to us, then we're sorely mistaken, because when it does, then we have no idea how to manage it. Yeah. And so really, thank you so much for that. So tell me, why is supporting IDA and helping change the way the world sees disabilities so important to you?
Well, as I mentioned, the personal experience with my dad and what he went through, a lot of people I've worked with and know and friends, life's hard, and it's hard if you don't have a physical or invisible disability. So can you imagine adding that onto your plate? And then I've been involved in some great events and experiences where I've seen people that have a physical disability or an invisible disability happy, right? Because they're cherishing life. Now, a lot of them that have chronic pain, and that's a different story because they're actually suffering. But I've seen people that have to go through life and have some sort of disability and be happy. And then I see people that don't have any disabilities besides mental mental issues of their own creating, have everything in the world and not be happy, right? So when you see these two viewpoints of life, you understand that it doesn't, materialistic things doesn't do anything. It fills a void, and a very blip of a void. So if you're chasing that for happiness and you have the world as your oyster and you're not happy, well, that's what it breaks my heart. I want to see all those resources and wealth go over to the right warranted people, organizations like yours. So it drives me crazy. So I do try to bridge that gap where I am very, and I try not to be rude, but I am very vocal when it comes to obnoxious people around me that are just boasting and talking about obnoxious things. Like I don't know if I'm there to slap them with a few words in the face and have them wake up, or if I'm there to, as a reminder of how, hey, I never want to act like that, or a mixture of both. But in those moments, I try to make people understand how blessed they are. And, maybe you don't need that other Rolex, or maybe you don't need that fourth home. Maybe help people. Like maybe look at organizations like IDA. Maybe look at taking what you've been blessed with financially and understand that your own little bubble of a world is not the reality of billions of people around the world. So it's been a it's been a path of mine because I've been on both sides. I've had everything. I've had less than nothing. So
Mm.
I understand the worlds very well, and I was able to do that without. I believe I don't have an invisible disability. I know I am someone that internalizes, which I've been working on my entire life, a lot of stress and anxieties. I know I gave myself shingles on my journey. I know I gave myself Bell's palsy. In 2022, I had my gallbladder taken out, and it's funny because whenever I get stressed or I would get upset or mad or angry, I feel this pain in this pit. Well, that's coincidentally exactly where my gallbladder was. So,
Right.
we create our illnesses too, I believe, and we give ourselves. Our brain is very powerful, and I also believe the brain in the right environment and the right um, resources and tools such as you guys have. I also believe you can make your day better and maybe heal yourself. That sounds crazy, but I do believe that the brain can go both ways for your body. And if you can find a way to be as positive as possible and have support like what you've created, um, I think there's a chance to help people really tremendously. Not only get through the day, but maybe turn their health around.
Well, I think that a big part of that is, um, we don't want to hear what people have to say about the difficulties they're going through, which are real, and we need to believe them. Because if we believe people and validate what they're going through, then it gives them an opportunity to say, okay, oh man, that's awesome, thank you so much, and then maybe they can talk about life and not have to talk about what they're going through. That's a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
And that we like to do here. The other thing is that you know. It's being realistic about it. It is not all about, in the sense of, well, some people will say, oh, be positive. You're talking about, you're going through this super difficult. And they're like, well, be positive. It's like, well, wait a second. What I'm going through is real. So positive is not it's denying what you're doing. So what people find is they find joy. You talked about that, the whole issue of happiness. Um, uh, you know, I actually did a keynote called Finding Joy in the Midst of Suffering Through Healthy Humor, right?
Yeah.
And it's really about, how do you find joy in the midst of suffering? Well, you find it because understanding that suffering is part of life, and you find the joy when you're able to help other people that are going through things, like we provide the comfort that we get to provide it to others, or you're making a difference, as you said, where, if your life is all about you, then you're going to be pretty miserable.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
when your life is about, can I lift other people up, in the sense of, not that they're broken. We want to blame people with disabilities, say they're broken or you're at fault or all these horrible things, versus just understanding that that's part of who they are. You talked about some of the things that invisible disabilities, we consider them, phobias and addictions and chronic illnesses, all those things are invisible disabilities. But invisible disabilities is not a negative thing per se. It's just a technical term we use.
Yeah.
And really understanding that through a lot of assistive devices, we can operate in life and to get through lives, and so I really, appreciate that. And by believing people, listening to people, I think that we're going to make the difference. So
Absolutely.
as we kind of wrap this up, this is, like I said, the InCourage show, and that's I encourage, not encourage. And one of the things we always like to ask is, so Brian, what gives you courage to make it through today? Not make it through the week or the month, or
Yeah.
go on forever and ever. But what is that one thing that you could share that just gives you courage? Because courage is what you need when you're going through a tough time. You don't need courage if everything's happy go lucky, right?
Yeah.
So
I've been through more than the average bear, as Yogi Bear would say. So the cartoon, not the baseball player. I uh, I I know what I love about my day is I get to speak with people like you, founders, people that are struggling. Like, my day is filled up with really great conversations, and I know the crap that I've been through, losses, family illnesses, business debacles. It's nuts. Um, it's like I've been through 200 years of Vietnam War in my journey. But I don't sit there and say, oh, why me, poor me, I didn't deserve that. Like, I look at everything as a learning experience, and how do I relate or share that with somebody else that's going through whatever they may be going through. And what gives me what fuels me every day to get through the day is being a soundboard for somebody that's having a rough moment and helping them get through it, even if it's just listening. Because people, for whatever reason, my entire life, people share with me, and I never ask. I don't say, "Hey, tell me everything." I just sit there, and people just open up. And early on in my life, I'm like, "This is really awkward. Why they shouldn't be sharing this with anybody? Why me?" But I learned that people feel comfortable around me. Whatever people tell me lives in here. I don't share it with anybody. And if anything that they're saying, I can properly, not just my opinion or stupidity, but if I can properly respond with some of my own life lessons and my own personal convictions and feelings, that's genuine and not just words because I like the sound of my voice, but actually have meaning, and see them kind of get some oxygen back in their body and actually light up and feel good for a moment. That's the courage that gets me through the day, by helping somebody else get through the day. And I don't know why I'm here to do that, but I know I'm here to help people. I know I'm here to take my time and use it properly with the right people. And it's not, hey, here's a business deal. Now that person just made a bunch of money. It's nothing to do with that. It's about being a support system, an ally and friend in the world for somebody with no ulterior motives, and just be a decent human being. Now, if everybody could just do that for one other person, the world just corrected itself, right? It's a utopia or euphoria, whatever the right word is, and that's not a lot to do.
Yeah, I think about, our theme here in 2025 is see the invisible. That's our theme this year. It's about listen, believe, and support, right? So take time to listen, which is what you're doing. Believe what is shared. I mean, that's a big thing. We don't believe people because we can't see it, or it seems fantastic, but it's real. It's what they're going through. It's all those things that are impacting them. And then the last thing is support, which is provide support if needed. Because as you well have found out, is most of the time, or a lot of times, they just need somebody to listen, and to believe them. And then they can move on to other stuff. But when they're told through life that, oh, you're making it up and faking it and lying about it and trying to get some advantage because you have a disability, or it's like, I can tell you what, that's the one thing you don't want to do, is think that the disability gets you advantage, because everybody leaves, right? It's the one thing where nobody, they run away from you instead of run to you. So I really appreciate that, Brian. That's a great thing as well. Well, it's been an amazing time, an amazing journey with you. It's so good to see you and get together again. So I want to really thank you, Brian, for joining us on the Invisible InCourage Show. And you can learn more about the Invisible Disabilities Association at invisibledisabilities.org. Join us at IDA.FM for our podcast, and IDA.TV for our YouTube for more episodes and shows on everything from the brain to relationships to you name it. Lots of different areas that you can learn about. So thank you so much for joining us today.